Okay, let's dive straight into this first source you sent us. A really fascinating look at Banu Mushtaq. She's getting buzz as a Booker awardee for 2025, which is, incredible on its own.
hmm
But this piece makes it clear her impact goes far beyond just literary awards. She's described as a writer-activist, really focused on exposing gender inequality and, well, the kind of patriarchal violence often hidden by tradition.
Yeah, and what's really interesting here is how her voice didn't just appear out of nowhere, right? The source connects her work back to the Bandaya, the protest movement in Canada literature back in the 70s and 80s,
Ah, okay.
and the rise of women writers then. It shows how these sort of broader social shifts can really empower individual voices. And the fact she was also a lawyer. Using platforms like Lankesh Patrick for reporting, it gives you a sense of her practical side, too.
Right, right. Capturing those often silenced lives of Muslim women with a really keen, empathetic eye. The source mentions her stories are written with this deep engagement, patiently building up details from ordinary lives.
Exactly. And while, there can be raw anger sometimes, the source says the stronger stories are haunting.
Mm.
They depict lives that are, well, wasted or unlived because of these structures.
Mhm.
But crucially, they also show resilience, small acts of defiance. The goal isn't pity, it says, but really pushing for a deeper understanding.
Okay, here's where it gets really thought-provoking for me. That controversial prayer mentioned in one of her stories. A character praying for God to be born as a woman
hmm
apparently sparked calls for excommunication. But the source says the prayer itself isn't necessarily unique.
Right.
What's devastating is how it highlights a society where male domination made female servitude so normal, so invisible, nobody even notices anymore. It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it?
It really does. That insight into how injustice gets normalized through stories
Yeah.
is powerful. The source gives some potent examples, too, like stone slabs for Shaista Mahal,
Oh, yeah.
uses irony and emotion.
Mm.
A husband builds this grand mahal like a grave for his wife, then remarries super quickly.
Wow.
And black cobras, where a woman's cast out just for not having a son, and a religious figure kind of misinterprets things to back it up.
Then you get that contrast, like the Mutavali's wife in Black Cobras, Mutavali being like a trustee.
Yeah, manager of a walkable property.
Right. She decides she's not just a childbearing machine. That's the resilience part coming through.
Absolutely. Her work fundamentally challenges those traditional ideas about home and marriage, showing the home isn't always, safe or equal. And a key takeaway from the critic mentioned is that overcoming this stuff needs real foundational societal change.
Not just individual acts.
Exactly. So for you reading her work, it's not just great literature. It's a window into these complex, difficult realities, pushes you to see beyond the surface.
Okay, let's shift gears now. A legal issue impacting India. This source is about the center defending the 2025 amendment to the Waqf Act in the Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
The core challenge seems to be against this idea that creating a waqf, dedicating property for religious or charitable purposes in Islamic law, is an essential religious practice.
Yeah, this is where law and religious practice really intersect deeply. The center's main argument from the Solicitor General seems pretty clear. Waqf is basically charity.
Okay.
And charity, they argue, isn't an essential religious practice in any religion, including Islam. Meaning, being a Muslim isn't defined by creating a waqf.
So the state's argument is they can regulate the law because it only deals with the secular, the administrative side, things like finance, property management,
Precise.
which Articles 25 and 26 allow the state to regulate for transparency, public order, that kind of thing.
Exactly. They're trying to draw a really sharp line between the religious belief behind it and the secular management of the property. A big sticking point seems to be this whack by user thing the 2025 law invalidated.
Right, where a property becomes waqf just through long use.
Yeah, rather than a formal deed. The center claims previous laws only gave that statutory recognition, and, well, legislatures can change those things based on the current situation.
And they're even bringing up examples from Hindu law changes, like removing hereditary rights for temple managers.
Arguing it sets a precedent. Legislatures can modify practices previously recognized by statute, but they also emphasize a practical problem, according to the source.
Which is?
Widespread encroachments on Waqf properties, especially by unregistered Waqfs. They say mandatory registration's actually been required since, 1923.
Wow. Okay.
So their angle is overturning the invalidation of Waqf by user would sort of reward people who haven't followed the registration laws.
And what about the argument from the other side? that having a government official investigate if land is state land is like a judge acting in his own cause.
Yeah, the center apparently dismissed that as, well, absurd, saying that's just how government works, through its officers. And there are appeal routes anyway, the Waqf Tribunal, High Court, Supreme Court. So it really brings into focus that tricky balance, doesn't it? State regulation for transparency versus concerns about potential bias when the state itself is involved in deciding property status. The arguments are ongoing, the source says.
Right.
For you, the listener, this just shows those intricate legal battles that pop up when modern governance meets traditional practices and property rights.
Okay, switching gears completely now. This source about Imperial College London launching its fourth global hub, Imperial Global India, right there in Bengaluru,
Yeah.
looks like a major push to strengthen science, education, innovation links between India and the UK.
Definitely. It's a really clear sign of India's growing importance on the global R&D stage.
Yeah.
And the fact that Imperial already works with top places like ISC and NCBS.
Means they're not starting from scratch.
Exactly. It's about formalizing and, amplifying those existing ties.
The source has insights from folks at Imperial's Enterprise Lab, Ben Mumbicraft, Dr. Elena Diekman. They say the lab helps people explore ideas, not just start businesses. And get this, they say their Indian students are the most entrepreneurial they see.
That's quite a statement. They mentioned seeing about 2,000 individuals working on 500 ideas a year, leading to maybe 30, 40 startups.
Wow.
And while they cover all sectors, the big themes are health tech, med tech, and clean tech. Stuff like waste recycling, flood defense, a whole range.
So why are the Indian students so entrepreneurial, according to them? The source suggests it's the huge potential they see back home.
Oh, yeah.
Access to top software engineers, data scientists, coders. It allows for faster scaling, maybe more economic manufacturing than in the UK. And so a lot are actually heading back to India to launch.
That really speaks to the global flow of talent and innovation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The hub wants to be a two-way street, helping Indian startups look to the UK and UK startups enter India, exchanging best practices.
Like bringing UK climate tech startups to pitch in Bengaluru. That's a concrete example.
Exactly. And it's not just digital tech. Dr. Dykman mentioned seeing impressive stuff in agri-tech and sustainable farming in India, too. Cited Varanasi farms.
Interesting. And the post-Brexit situation seems to be a factor, pushing UK institutions towards more global growth.
Seems plausible, yeah. Connecting these innovation ecosystems globally is key. They're deepening ties with ISC and CBS and really keen on linking enterprise labs and supporting female entrepreneurs.
An area where both Imperial and India's NSRCEL are strong.
Right. So for you, this really underlines how major global players see India as this vibrant hub for innovation, particularly in critical areas like climate and health.
Okay, let's turn now to a very complex geopolitical issue, the Indus Waters Treaty between India and Pakistan. This source asks a really tough question. Should water be used as a weapon?
Yeah, this explainer gets right into the history. The treaty was born out of necessity after partition in 47. River headworks ended up in India. Pakistan was downstream.
Right.
The World Bank mediated, landed this agreement in 1960, basically gave the eastern rivers Ravi, Beas, Sutlej to India, and the western rivers Indus, Jhelum, Chenab to Pakistan.
But India got some usage rights on the western rivers.
Specific allowances, yeah. Mainly for hydropower, but under very strict conditions to ensure flow downstream.
And what's amazing is how long it's lasted. Survived 3 wars, countless diplomatic crises.
Incredible, isn't it? The source credits its technical focus, keeping politics out of the day-to-day outer stuff, and the fact that permanent Indus Commission's water experts from both sides kept meeting even during wars.
Plus that dispute resolution mechanism. Bilateral talks first, then maybe a neutral expert, then a court of arbitration. That's been key.
Absolutely. But, the source points out, the treaty is under increasing strain now. Geopolitics, especially after terrorist attacks linked to Pakistan-based groups.
Right.
That's led to calls within India to maybe use water as leverage, which raises huge ethical questions about honoring the treaty with a state seen as supporting terrorism.
And this change in tone coincides with India building more hydropower on the western rivers, like Kishanga and Rattle.
India says they comply with the treaty's run-of-river rules. But Pakistan argues the designs give India too much control, especially in dry seasons, potentially threatening their agriculture.
So the dispute mechanisms are being tested again.
Exactly. Kishanga went to a court of arbitration. They ruled India could proceed, but put conditions on flow and reservoir management. Rattle had that procedural fight, neutral expert or court of arbitration.
And the World Bank allowed both, but India boycotted the arbitration part.
Right, which is significant. It shows the legal framework is active, even if strained. The source also notes India's general preference since '72 for bilateral solutions, but points out the IWT is older and has its own structure for third-party involvement.
So what about withdrawing from the treaty? What are the risks?
Big risks, according to the source. The treaty itself has no provision for unilateral withdrawal. Doing it would likely bring sharp international criticism, hurt India's image.
Potentially worry other neighbors like Nepal and Bangladesh?
Exactly. And almost certainly trigger World Bank intervention. Plus, the source brings up the ethics. Water is a basic human right.
Using it as a weapon could devastate downstream communities, violates moral norms.
Right. So the conclusion seems to be India can maximize its usage within the treaty, build compliant projects, but abandoning it, that erodes India's legal standing, sets a dangerous precedent for using resources in conflict.
And dismantles a rare example of operation.
Precisely. For you, this just highlights that incredibly delicate balance between national security, international law, shared resources, and, well, basic human concerns.
Let's dive into an economic issue now. Poverty levels in India. The source discusses a recent paper, Himanshu and others, analyzing trends after 2011-12. And their main finding is pretty striking. Poverty reduction slowed down. A lot.
Yeah, and the context here is key. India hasn't had an official poverty estimate since that 2011-12 one, which used the Household Consumption Expenditure Survey, the HCES. So this gap led to a bunch of unofficial estimates, often contradictory. This paper tries to bring some clarity using a specific method.
Okay, so the official data showed poverty fell sharply, from 37% in 2004-05 down to 22% by 2011-12. But this new paper estimates, what? It only dropped to around 18% by 2022-23.
That's their estimate, yeah. And in absolute numbers, it means the number of poors only fell slightly, from about 250 million to maybe 225 million over that decade.
So why is getting a clear official picture so hard? The source mentions comparability issues between the old HCES and the new one.
Exactly, and the fact that 2017-18 HCES was scrapped entirely complicates things further.
So the paper talks about different ways people have tried to estimate this unofficially, using other NSSO surveys, but there were measurement changes.
Right, this UMPCE measure introduced around 2014-15 makes comparing tricky. Others use national accounts data, looking at the overall economy.
And the method these authors use is survey-to-survey imputation.
Basically using data from related, methodologically similar surveys to fill the gaps. They use the Tendulkar poverty lines, and crucially, employment surveys like EUS and PLFS.
Because those are more consistent method-wise.
Yeah, making the data fit the imputation more accurate. And they do it state by state, too.
Ah, the state trends. Their method suggests Uttar Pradesh saw a good reduction, but poorer states like Jharkhand, Bihar were slower, and some like Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh maybe stagnated?
That's what their analysis points to, yes. And they try to back this up with other economic data.
Yeah.
Slower GDP growth after 2011-12, 5.7% versus 6.9% before that aligns.
And real rural wage growth slowed, too.
Significantly, down from over 4% a year to just over 2%. But here's a really striking point they make.
Okay.
A reversal in the trend of workers leaving agriculture. For years, people moved out. But since 2017-18, they estimate 68 million workers have actually moved back into agriculture.
Wow. 68 million back into agriculture. What does that mean for poverty?
Well, that's the big question, right? More workers in farming, especially if productivity growth is slow, can push wages down, potentially hindering poverty reduction overall. So while they say we need new comparable government data for a full resolution, their conclusion is the evidence strongly suggests poverty reduction needs to speed up again. For you, understanding these different methods and the supporting data gives a more nuanced view of this whole poverty debate.
Okay, let's get into another big environmental challenge. Overfishing in India. This source paints a picture of a sector that's kind of hit its limit yield-wise, but the wealth isn't shared, and the practices are damaging the marine environment.
The stats are pretty stark. Marine fisheries yield is stable, yeah, but 90% of the fishers are small scale. They only catch 10% of the volume.
While the bigger operations take the rest.
Right. And critically, 3/4 of marine fisher families live below the poverty line, often caught in this cycle of trying to catch just one more kilo, sinking deeper into debt.
That shrimp trawler example is shocking. For every kilo of shrimp, 10 kilos of bycatch dead or dying juvenile fish, other species just discarded.
It's not just waste, it's the future, isn't it? Juvenile fish, Non-target species vital for the ecosystem.
So this raises huge questions about sustainability. Trawling damages biodiversity, food webs, future catches.
Exactly. And catching juvenile fish with those small mesh nets, that depletes the spawning stock. It's how you get collapses like the cod in Canada or sardines in California. Recovery takes years or might never happen.
And a major hurdle seems to be India's fragmented rules,
Yeah.
different regulations in each coastal state.
Yeah, that patchwork makes it easy for less scrupulous fishers to exploit loopholes, catch undersized fish here, land them over there where rules are different or maybe enforcement is weaker.
So the need is for harmonization, national standards, uniform catch limits, minimum sizes, gear restrictions, closed seasons.
Pretty much, yeah. The source points to lessons from places like New Zealand, their quota management system, linking fishing allowances to actual stock health using science.
But there are Indian successes too. Kerala enforcing a minimum legal size for threadfin bream led to a 41% catch rise.
In just one season. Shows that letting fish mature actually benefits everyone, the ecosystem, and the fisher's income in the medium term.
Another critical area mentioned is the fish meal and fish oil industry, FMFO.
Right. It's largely fed by this low-value bycatch. Creates a perverse incentive, really. Makes waste profitable.
And a lot is exported while Indian consumers and aquaculture lose out.
Exactly. Solutions proposed include capping FMFO quotas or maybe mandating onboard release of juveniles.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Addressing this needs action on multiple levels, doesn't it? National policy, state enforcement, empowering local communities.
And consumer choices, too. Making sustainable seafood choices. Overexploitation plus climate risks like storms and erosion. It's a double whammy for coastal livelihoods and biodiversity.
But the source says solutions are within reach.
Yeah, it connects protecting marine life directly to food security, livelihoods now, and ecological resilience for the future. It's all linked.
Okay, let's wrap up our deep dive today looking at this quite concerning source about cyclones and climate change. We know they're powerful, but warming is making their effects worse and more widespread.
Yeah, this is based on new research from ETH Zurich. It highlights that under future climate scenarios, especially high-emission ones like SSP 5 8.5, we can expect more havoc, not just from stronger storms.
But also from them hitting places they historically haven't.
Exactly. The source explains these SSP scenarios, different possible futures based on fossil fuel use, etc. SSP 5 8.5 is a particularly high one, and one scientist notes it's already kind of gaining momentum in reality.
Worrying. And there was a follow-up study mentioned about mangroves.
Right. Found that nearly half the world's mangroves could be at high to severe risk by 2100 under that same high-emission scenario. Mangroves are vital coastal protectors, carbon sinks.
So the study has used complex modeling, looking at ecoregions, their historical exposure, ability to recover.
And found areas currently seen as resilient could see recovery times between intense storms drop significantly, meaning they're just constantly vulnerable.
And what about the geographic shifts? More intense activity expected where? East Asia, Central America, Caribbean, Madagascar, Oceania.
Yeah, those areas. And some places, like the Philippines, could see frequencies never recorded before. But it gets even more concerning.
How so?
The model suggests cyclone belts could actually shift away from the equator, bringing new threats to higher latitude regions.
Places whose ecosystems just aren't adapted to them.
Precisely, making them incredibly vulnerable. And even under a less severe scenario, SSP3 7.00, the models still show almost all mangroves protecting people in Southeast Asia could face high to severe risk.
So even less extreme warming has huge impacts. It raises the question, are we really prepared?
That's what the authors warn. We might be underestimating the scale of what's coming. They suggest we need to build long-term recovery time into risk assessments and plan conservation with these shifting patterns in mind.
So for you, the listener, this highlights just how far-reaching climate change impacts are. It's not just stronger storms where we expect them.
It's entirely new threats in unexpected places, potential for ecosystems to be permanently altered. It really underscores the urgency of understanding these projections.
Thank you for listening. You can give suggestions by contacting on Twitter handle given in the episode description. We are always eager to hear what our listeners want to be informed about.